Welcome back to What Do You Know with Nick and Devin. I'm Nick.
I'm Devin.
Hi, Dev.
Hello.
Okay, I chose a bad time to reach for my coffee, but question for you.
So,
What are some of your holiday traditions? Like, what are things? Okay, either like what are things that you do every year that you feel like you have to, and it can be like trivial things like I always make sure I watch these movies.
Sure.
Or what are things that like you want to do? Like what are things that you like haven't done in the past that you're like I could kind of like that tradition?
I miss going sledding.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like because of global warming, I haven't gotten really a chance to have enough snow to go sledding.
That's fair.
But also, like, I'm just a big old guy. I don't think I can go sledding by myself.
Just like taking out kids at the base.
Yeah. Like, I could understand I could go snowboarding, but then I have to like buy a snowboard and like learn how to do that. That's a lot. But for like things that I do every year, I at least watch Muppet Christmas Carol. Like that's the one holiday movie that I make sure I watch.
Sure.
There's others that like pop on, whatever, but it's always Muppet Christmas Carol. That's the best.
Do you like sit down and get cozy and like turn it on? Or is it just like I am going to put this on?
No, it's an active watch.
You dedicate your time.
Yeah.
You can't just passively watch the Muppets.
No, I can't passively watch like anything because otherwise I'll just stop and watch whatever's on the TV.
Are you one of the guys that will just like stand and like get distracted by something?
Yeah, absolutely. I've perfected my dad pose. It's either like hands on my hips, hands crossed, legs spread a little bit, just like standing in front of the TV, watching either the game, the news, the show.
Well, so like our setup, but like couch and then like the two armchairs. So I'm usually in the armchair and then Brian's on the couch. And so there are a lot of times where I'll stand up and we're watching something, but the intention is just go into the kitchen, grab something, come back.
Right.
But then I don't.
You don't move?
I don't move. I just like stand there and just watching the TV. So then like Brian will give it a minute and then he'll pause it. And I'll be like, why'd you pause it? And he's like, aren't you doing something? Like, you're standing for a reason. Right, exactly. Like, oh, right.
Yeah.
And then I'll come back. But I don't mind standing and watching something.
No. It helps me focus.
Right. Yeah. The standing helps you focus.
I think so.
I get that. There has to be some science behind that.
Yeah, if it's something important, gotta stand and watch.
Yeah, gotta stand and watch. Okay, so you watch Muppet Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
Are there anything else?
Not really. I mean, like setting up the tree, of course. Celebrating with friends and families. I think it's a lot of like just cozy food comes around with the holiday season as well. Like heavy, hearty Midwest meals.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of all that I expect each year.
Yeah.
How about you?
That's fair. There's no like big traditions. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, we'll make like specific food for like each meal. And I will say that's like, I think it just because I center myself around food in a lot of ways. I think that there was one year, I think it was COVID year or something, where like on Christmas Day, we had gone over to like my like in-laws family's house, and then we didn't like have anything else to do because everyone doesn't celebrate on the day anymore.
Right.
I was like, I remember growing up and my ass had to run around to like 5 different houses on one day. Okay.
Yeah.
Now everyone's like, oh, we can celebrate Christmas on a Saturday, on the Sunday, on the Wednesday before. I'm like, that's not Christmas. Anyway, sorry.
Wow.
I get it. It's helping. But also I'm just like, I don't need Christmas spread across 5 days. You know what I mean? I'd rather just run around in one day.
I disagree.
Really?
Absolutely.
But it was the best because it was just like, okay, you start at like 9 a.m. at my grandparents, and then you're at every place for like hour to 2 hours, and then you're next place. And then by the time you get home, it's like 8, 9 p.m. and you're done. And then you're done. That's all I'm saying.
I didn't really experience that as a kid though, so I don't really have that relation.
That's fair.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we didn't have anything to do that night. So Brian was like, oh, like, do you want to just like order Chinese food? And I was like, sure. And then like we like ate Chinese food and then just like watched TV, and I was just like, this feels like a just regular Tuesday. And I was so pissed. I was just like moody like the whole next day because I was just like, this is not Christmas. And I was like, am I a grouch? And I think we know. Yeah, we are. I am. What do you call it? And you guys didn't do any like religious stuff for the holidays, did you? Growing up?
We used to try to go to church.
Sure.
Every now and then, like it wouldn't be every year, but every once in a while, I'd be like, "All right, we're gonna go to church." And eventually, it just became my dad going to church on Christmas Eve, and then it was just no one's going to church.
And then that kind of toppled into it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that kind of relays into the topic a little bit. Okay, Devin. So, what do you know about Panquetzaliztli?
Nothing.
You don't know about the ancient Aztec tradition?
No. I
Weird.
don't. Yeah, I know. As a white man, I have no idea about this ancient
weird.
Aztec tradition.
You haven't been brushing up. Okay, but Panquetzaliztli is, and I wrote out the phonetics this time.
Thank you.
Because, woo, lordy, this is the celebration of Huitzilopochtli, which is and that one I don't have to write out phonetically anymore.
You've said it so many times now.
Just trapped in the skull. But it's the big celebration of the sun god.
Cool.
During the 18th, we'll get into kind of when the calendar, things like that. But it's kind of their long 20-day festival around that.
Yeah.
And so what we're going to talk about is how that then became Christmas for the Mexican people.
Okay.
Yay! How colonialism stepped in and really turned it around.
We have a way of doing that.
Have you heard? So, Panquetzaliztli, it means rising of banners. And so there's a lot of like banner play.
Okay.
If you some
kinky.
banner play. But really what it is just the celebration of Huitzilopochtli and kind of the rebirth during the winter solstice.
Sure.
So, and then of course colonialism was like, oh, winter, sun god, Jesus. And then that kind of happened. We'll talk about that again. But there were 3 phases following kind of a complete ritual cycle of sorts. So there was a preparation phase, a climax phase, or like main festivals, and then the closing phase. Mm-hmm. So it lasted from, depending as you like relate, the Aztec calendar to the Gregorian calendar, it was about late November through mid to late December.
Okay.
So in Gregorian eyes, lines up. You know what I mean? This was also the 15th month of the Xiuhpoayi, which is the Aztec calendar. It's the Aztec solar calendar.
Sure.
So it's the Viennetta system, which was broken into 18 months, each spanning 20 days, and then followed by a 5-day nameless period, or Nimotemi, which I was like, so you named it, so it's not nameless.
Yeah. Is it?
Well,
do we understand why it's nameless?
I think it's just like 18 months, 20 days.
Yeah.
I think they're like 20. And they're like, this is pretty solid. But then we're like, oh, there's 365 days in a year.
Right.
So we're like, just kind of happens at the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah. I think that's kind of what happened. So that's kind of a little bit about the calendar itself. But it's in the 15th month. And ends up kind of lining up around winter then.
Cool.
So we're going to just kind of go through the different kind of chunks of days and kind of what was involved in those chunks. And then at the end, kind of talking a little bit about like, obviously the relation from that to modern day kind of Christmas and how Mexico really celebrates Christmas.
Sure.
Cool. So days 1 through 5 was preparation and purification. So focus on spiritual cleansing and community preparation.
Okay.
Get ready. Activities included ritual baths in kind of like sweat lodges, temazcal, or rivers to purify the body, along with the burning of copal, which were kind of incense.
Sure.
And so the ritual prepared participants to interact with divine forces by removing physical and spiritual impurities, ensuring a harmonious connection with the gods.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, right. Kind of just like, I am clean.
Yeah.
Fasting by participants, especially priests and warriors, to prepare for ceremonies happened as well. So sacred banners called pantli were crafted. And the banners were crafted from a matel, which is like bark paper.
Okay.
I actually have this. I bought 2 paintings called amate paintings, which are like made from bark and then into wood, kind of like a papyrus of sorts.
Okay.
And they're really, really cool. And I got them at an estate sale.
Oh.
And I ended up getting them framed. Also, custom framing. Horrifically expensive. She showed me the price and I was like, oh, for 2? She's like, that's for 1. I was like, oh, I guess.
Yeah.
Tap it. But it's really cool. Just think of it more of like a papyrus of sorts.
Cool.
And adorned with feathers, often dyed blue and gold to represent the sky and sunlight.
Oh, okay.
Those are kind of that and a little bit of red kind of represent Huitzilopochtli a lot.
Sure.
But the blue of the sky, and also like if you remember his serpent was blue, kind of like lightning bolt sort of asking. Yeah. So families and communities displayed banners to show devotion, and banners were also carried in processions.
Okay.
So priests and community members molded a sacred figure, an effigy of Huitzilopochtli, using dough made from amaranth seeds mixed with honey and sometimes human blood. We'll get into a little bit more about like blood itself and kind of what it represented, and why it kind of. I think sometimes like a lot of times we like, talk about the Mexican people or the Aztecs, and it's kind of like they were bloodthirsty and everything revolved around blood and blah 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 blah. And so I wanted to bring a little bit of that into it, and we'll talk about it like a little bit later. But like there is really importance around it. It's not just like we were savages, quote unquote.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, so just throwing it out there. And also, there's a mix of this history coming from actual Mexican people and coming from like grain of salt Spanish people and their viewpoint as well. So we still know that as we are learning more and more, there's a balance of that.
Of course.
To the people.
But I also feel like, to go back into the blood, I feel like there are so many ancient cultures that surround something important with blood, right, whether it be human blood or sacrificial animal blood, whatever.
Right.
There's so much importance to the life essence of living creatures.
Right.
That, like, I don't know, it makes sense.
They understood that blood is what makes live.
Life. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So there was a vital force. And so then how do we kind of relate that to the gods, and what does that mean? And so I would give up my vital force, you know what I mean, to the ones that, you know, support us, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. So like I said, we'll get in a little bit in a minute. But families and communities, I said that already. So they made this dough, and they would kind of mold it into a depiction of Huitzilopochtli. So in the best way you can. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So there are some tales of that actually happening where like individual households will have that, right? And sometimes they'll kind of decorate their altar with like bark and different things. And there's even a ceremony where elders will take like maguey leaves and like shake them with water to like bless them. And like this water kind of in a gourd kind of like represented kind of wisdom in a way. And so then that was kind of dashed onto the altar as well. But there's also a story about kind of these pseudo nuns, priestesses of sorts that kind of lived in the temple. Yeah. Cool. Into it. Got it. Okay.
Vibing.
Right. Kind of lived in the temple for a bit, for about a year. And then what they would do is basically bring in like different parts of this bread to create the altar and create the depiction in the main like kind of temple and altar and all of those things. So there's kind of a ceremony that might be, I saw it like in one source that I use, and I didn't really see that anywhere else. So that's why I'm like hesitant to fully throw that out there. But I was like, that's kind of cool. And I could see if everyone else is doing that, having a bigger depiction of that, you know what I mean, in kind of the main temple as well.
For sure.
But I thought that was kind of cool.
Do they eat these depictions at some point?
They do. Yeah. So we'll talk about that. That's not day 1 through 5.
Sorry. I was just excited to like people argue over like who gets the ear.
Fair point, though. My grandmother, or my great grandmother, and my aunt used to fight over the eye of the cow. Oh, yeah, because it's kind of like egg yolk.
Yeah, okay.
So you kind of just like get in there. You know what I mean? It's fine. Anyway, so yikes. So the effigy was elaborately decorated with feathers, paint, and jewelry symbolizing the god's form and power. Amaranth, a sacred plant, represented sustenance and divine life energy. Okay. We need more amaranth in our life. You know what I mean? What birth month is amaranth? And so the effigy embodied Huitzilopochtli, allowing worshippers to consume his essence during the communal eating ritual. Oh, so,
just like communion in a Catholic church,
if you will. Here's a little wafer. Here's a little treat.
So dry. Right.
Sorry. So food offerings were made for the festival as well, featuring tamales, stews, and others made from corn and amaranth.
Sure.
So That's days 1 through 5.
Okay.
Okay. So days 6 through 10 is the rising of banners and initial offerings. Okay. So this was a focus on honoring Huitzilopochtli through public rituals.
Sure.
Okay. So I think you'll see a lot of like blending, right?
Yeah.
Like this can I think this kind of like, I chunked it out in a way that was kind of like mainly this would kind of happen at this time, but there's overlap, right?
Okay.
But really that's kind of, we go from like preparation and cleansing into like the actual like offerings and banners and then into, and so it's really more fluid than just like, and then on the 6th day, you know
right.
what I mean?
Well, I feel like since it's such a long time for ceremony, things aren't going to be exactly to the second.
Well, and like it's all happening in communities about. Yeah, exactly. Not everyone's like, and now.
Right. Yeah. Sync our watches.
Yeah. Swiss. So in the early mornings, priests lit fires and sang hymns in honor of Huitzilopochtli. A symbolic raising of the banners at the temple marked the official start. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of a little bit like, that's finally happening. But banners were hoisted at temples and homes to symbolize the power and triumph of Huitzilopochtli, the sun god. The raising of banners represented victory and the alignment of the community with divine forces, celebrating Huitzilopochtli's legendary triumph over darkness.
Oh.
And that theme comes in a lot.
Yeah.
So if you, I talk about it in a second, but if you remember from when we talked about like the kind of origin of the Aztecs and some of the creation history, like Huitzilopochtli like fought his sister and his 400 brothers, and so it's kind of, and because his sister represents the moon and like of course his brothers represent the stars, then it's kind of like this fight of the sun over darkness, and so you kind of constantly see that back and forth in that dichotomy, right? So dances were performed to the rhythm of drums, flutes, and conch shell trumpets. Which was like, that's pretty fun.
Awesome.
Yeah. Right? All I could think of, though, is the conch shell from SpongeBob.
Absolutely.
That's all I could think of. It's like, damn it. So special dances reenacted Huitzilopochtli's battles, including his mythical fight against his sister and his brother, 400 gods of the stars, or of the south, the stars. The performances honored the god's strength and the Aztec belief in the cyclical struggle between light and darkness. Offerings of food, flowers, and copal, or incense, were also made at this time.
Okay.
So this is really just kind of like, okay, it's happening, everyone. Get ready. So there's like dances and all these things, and it's just like a fun time for a couple days, right? So days 11 through 15 is processions and dances. So this focuses on community engagement and mythical reenactments. So we see a little bit of that in kind of like the dances to represent like the fight and the battle. This is a little bit more like, okay, we're going to have like, now we have processionals. Now we have like ritual dances. Now it's a little bit more like the former is like theatrical and fun and everyone's just kind of dancing. This is a little bit more like ritual based. You know what I mean? So there's a focus on community engagement and mythical reenactments. So there were grand processions through processions, grand processions through cities and towns led by warriors. So processions included warriors dressed as gods or animals or mythical creatures carrying banners, shields, and ceremonial weapons and like figures. It was pretty cool. I mean, that site's got to be pretty awesome. Right. You know what I mean? I'm just like, bring it back. So priests and devotees carrying effigies and banners through the streets with hymns sung to Huitzilopochtli's honor. So just very grandiose. What you're picturing in your head is probably what happened.
And more.
Right. And more. Wait, there's more. So performances of ritual dances such as the mitote, symbolizing cosmic battles. So when I looked into the mitote, it kind of means different things for different regions. Some of it was very felt very, I took a substance and now it's kind of like floaty and like there's kind of this like ritual thing. Some of it was a circular kind of dance. Very like we all skip in 5 successions one way and then we skip in 5 successions the reverse way. You know what I mean? So things like that. So it kind of depended, and there was some blending between even like Native American like U.S. Native American tribes and also the Mexican people, but also some things in like Southern and like Central America were kind of different. But just know that it's more of a like ritual-based dance is what we're looking at. Okay. So that would happen and symbolizing cosmic battle. So they would kind of do these dances. I think they did these dances where it was like there was the structured kind of skip in one way, skip in the other, or this kind of circular like ceremonial thing. But then there were also those dances where they were more theatrical, or this is like a ritual based, but what it represents is like battle and the cosmos and all of these things.
Yeah, the
right?
turmoil and whatnot. Yeah.
Exactly. So outside of that, there was distribution of small ceremonial items such as paper decorations or small food offerings kind of across the communities and such. And then these events reaffirm the collective identity of the Aztecs as Huitzilopochtli's chosen people and celebrate the victory of light over darkness.
Sounds like a great time.
It's a good time. That's what I'm saying. We got processions. We got dances. We got food. We got all the.
We got mysterious drugs.
We got costumes.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's like Carnival, but like better.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. Okay. Bring it back. So that's day like 11 through 15. A lot of that happens. Okay.
Yeah.
You're on like a 4-day little thing.
Great trip.
Great trip. So day 16 through 19 is really the climax here. So this is where we get into it. So there was kind of a focus on sacrifices and consumption of the sacred effigy. So we'll talk a little bit about actually eating that amaranth bread now. So the sacred effigy of Huitzilopochtli is ritually killed by priests. Oh. So a little more context to that.
Yeah.
So the foot race there's a foot race that kind of happens. And it's where a child dressed as Paenal, who's the messenger of Huitzi, kind of represents Huitzi as kind of a younger person, even though he was born as a full-grown man in battle regalia. Representation matters.
Right.
And so they take that image, that child as the Paenal takes the image of Huitzi, of the sun god, and like races across kind of towns.
Oh, okay.
And so behind him, though, are kind of other youths, if you will, just chasing after him.
Okay.
I couldn't really find like what they represented.
Would it be like the 400 stars?
That's what I thought, and I saw that like a little bit, but no one was like definitive on like, and they represent the 400 stars, because I don't think they had 400 children running in circles.
Yeah. Well, because also too, I'm sure like some kids might have just joined in the run for the fun of it,
as you will. Yeah.
Kids
like,
be kids.
When they depict like children running after cars, I'm just like, why are we running after cars? Anyway, right? So I was like, that's dangerous. But so he would run, and as he is chased by other youths that are carrying paper flags, of course, since you get it. So he runs towards different sacred places. So like a temple, an ancient tree, a spring, a hill, an altar, all before returning and placing the image of Huitzi on the altar. Okay. So what happens is when he takes the image of Huitzi off the altar, it's replaced by an image of Huitzilopochtli fighting his sister.
Oh.
So in that, basically what's happening is he's taking that image and running and spreading kind of like the goodwill and the good cheer and kind of the awareness of Huitzilopochtli across the land, right?
Sure.
And then coming back, showcasing that he came back to defeat his sister and now has, and then that gets taken off and Huitzilopochtli prevails. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's kind of what it is. In relation to like Christmas, no one has made this connection.
Sure.
But it reminds me a little bit of like Santa, like going about spreading Christmas cheer.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? But that's kind of, that's what happened. So this replaces the current image of him in battle with his sister. And the sound of a conch shell trumpet rings out, and the day has conquered night. The light of the sun has vanished darkness, and the Mexican people celebrate the daily sacrifice of the sun as he dies in the west for us.
Oh yeah.
Because that's the thing, is that there was a ideology that as the sun set, the sun was sacrificing itself and dying, and then being reborn the next day. And there was this kind of cycle of that. And there's also like the cycle of the suns, like when the fifth sun and all of those things. But there was just this moment of conqueredness, and that was like the big thing, right?
Yeah,
that was one of the big things that happened. So at that point, though, pieces of the effigy made of that bread were distributed to the people for communal consumption. So the god sacrificed himself for the nourishment of his people. Is kind of that thing, right? Here, take my body. Exactly. So Aztecs consumed the pieces in a communal meal, often after making offerings or prayers. This act symbolized unity with the god among the community. Eating the effigy signified taking in divine energy and renewing the bond with Huitzilopochtli.
Do you think it was like dry, or do you think it was like?
Oh, absolutely.
This is day 16. Yeah. It's been pretty old and dry now.
It's rough.
Yeah.
Like I get it. Like there's like maybe some blood in there, or maybe some honey, but like that's not gonna keep it moist.
Yeah, unless you're like really hoping for high humidity.
Yeah. Oh. Well, yeah. I just like.
But then it's just like mold.
Yeah. I just can't. Like, it has to be like dunked in something, right?
I hope so.
Or everyone's just kind of like.
Yeah, or like a good blood sauce, you know,
if you will. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, okay. Anyway, so other things that happen, major sacrifices also occur at Templo Mayor and other temples around.
Sure.
So these sacrifices were often made, of course, to Huitzi, as well as Tlaloc, which was the rain god.
Okay.
I think just kind of like, please bring us good rain come the next season and all of these things,
course.
right? So human sacrifices often of prisoners of war were offered to the god. So some sources have determined one of the reenactments of like battles between Huitzi and his sister and brothers, that actually culminated in like a real battle. So basically what they think is like there might have been like actual theatrical reenactment.
Sure.
But then also there's a potential that there was one of them that was real.
Oh,
that
okay.
like they did go and fight in combat, right?
Oh.
And I think we see that varying times. Like even we talked about in my last episode, we talked about how there was this kind of like sport for sacrifice.
The ceremonial battle rather than a real battle.
Right. And this is still it. But it's still, I'm like, that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
So so there's potential for that. It wasn't definitive, but it's potential that one of those battles was actual to then continue to sacrifice for the god.
Someone regifted something, got pissed. Their uncle said something terribly political.
Exactly. You get it. You get it.
Happens all the time.
Happens all the time.
We're not so different.
So that might have happened, which I could see.
Yeah,
especially because we see it in other ways. But basically, anyone and those destined for sacrifice either fell in battle or were captured to be sacrificed later.
Oh, okay.
So at the Templo Mayor, hearts were removed and offered to the sun as nourishment, and then the bodies were kicked down the stairs in reference to the act done by Huitzilopochtli to his sister in their battle.
Sure.
Because when they fought, and then he was like, no, fuck you, and then kicked her. You know what I mean? Feels very anticlimactic. You know what I mean? Just like kick her down a hill, you know?
Well,
it happens.
Just gonna hit her head on a rock.
She was like, ugh, I can't come back up. You know?
So far of a climb.
Very bridge to Terabithia. You know what I mean? So sacrifices were believed to sustain the sun, ensuring its rise and continuation of life on Earth. The blood represented life's vital force. That's kind of what we were talking about before, right?
Yeah.
So pleasing the gods and reaffirming the cosmic order. So Theolia, which is the soul, is seen in all things. Okay. So there's kind of a belief. It's very like force-ish, but not. Like water is the Theolia of Mother Earth.
Okay.
Sap for trees, blood for humans.
Sure.
Right? So kind of comparison. And then what would that be? Think of like an SAT question. So the gods spill and sacrifice their Theolia in order to bring the world into being and nourish corn and crops. So thus, as they sacrifice, we must do the same.
Okay.
So that's kind of like, I just wanted to give a little more context to like why there were sacrifices and why blood was kind of so
definitely
prominent in a lot of stories. I think some people are just like, that's just, the Spaniards thinking that they were right, that they were just savages. And it's just like, sure, I think that there could be some depictions where it is a little bit more intense and ruthless written through that lens, but this is just like these things like would have happened and did happen. It's just a little bit more ritualistic, a little bit more savage. It's not just as barbaric as we're just going to do it to do it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Spaniards had no context as to why these sacrifices were happening.
Right.
And meanwhile, the people who are performing these sacrifices are being very careful and proper and respectful of all the things that they're doing.
Right.
So
and to the Spaniards, like, we don't do that. Like that. Why would you ever? And you're just like, okay. Well, because they also have Christianity. One true God. So, anyway. So I just wanted to talk a little bit more about blood.
Yeah.
blood. I just think of muffins. So that was 90 days, 16 through 19.
Cool.
Okay. So that's kind of like the climax. Those are like the big things that happen.
I mean, I'd hope that's the big thing.
How
do you top that?
Right, exactly. They just burn it all down.
Right.
Yeah.
Start over.
Yeah, exactly. So day 20 is renewal and closing. So
cure the hangover, clean up.
Correct. Exactly. So priests extinguish the old fire at the temple and light a new sacred fire, symbolizing the rebirth of the sun.
Oh,
yeah. So this new fire is distributed to homes and other temples. So basically they're like one big fire, and then everyone kind of like comes and takes some, and then you kind of run around. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah,
I like that. So communities gather for large feasts featuring tamales, stew, and pulque, celebrating.
That's
a good hangover food. And this celebrated the renewed strength of the sun and life.
Sure.
Right? The renewal of the fire signifies the beginning of the new solar cycle, while feasting and sharing food unite the community in gratitude.
Oh. That's nice.
So this was kind of just like the main festival.
Yeah.
So this happened every 15th month, kind of the winter solstice, big celebration to Huitzilopochtli.
Yeah.
Right. So a little bit of the formation into Christmas.
Right.
So not only was celebration occurring winter, it celebrated the Mexican people's main god, Huitzilopochtli, whereas which then, of course, Huitzi becomes Jesus as the Christians step in, right? His mother, Coatlique, becomes the Virgin Mary.
Interesting. Okay.
Well, because if you think about it, she kind of had an immaculate conception with him too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So it was kind of like she just like birthed them outright, you know?
Just that 1-to-1 is a little off, but okay.
You're like, so altars have scenes of nativity versus scenes of Huitzilopochtli and like his background, right? Piñata is replaced by the tossing of edible effigy. Because like at that point, like when they break him apart, you know, the priests kind of like toss it into the crowd. So there's kind of like breaking and like sharing and you know what I mean? So I think they kind of like brought that in to supplement in a way, which is kind of weird, but like could see that kind of tie. And Posadas replaced the multi-day festivals. So just a little bit about Posadas really quick. So Las Posadas starts 9 days before Christmas and represents Mary and Joseph's journey from Nazareth to Bethlehem. And so that still happens today. This is Christmas in Mexico, is Las Posadas. And other places do this as well. But each of the 9, and Posadas means like inn or like lodging. Almost.
That makes sense.
So each of the 9 days is meant to represent a value such as humility, strength, detachment, charity, trust, justice, purity, joy, and generosity. So pick one. People are split basically to play like pilgrims to innkeepers. And the pilgrims parade through the street following the mystery. And which is usually depicted by like a statue of Mary.
Yeah.
So think like very like, you know how you've seen like people kind of carrying the Virgin Mary through the streets. Think very that.
Okay. Sure. I just gotta say, there's a lot of LARPing going on. Live action role playing.
LARPing of Jesus and Mary.
Yeah, this whole time. Both in the ancient times and then when Christmas came over with the Spaniards. This is a lot of LARPing.
This is a lot.
Bunch of fucking nerds.
Are you saying that Christianity is just LARPing at a large scale?
Yeah.
100%. Okay. All right. I can see that. Well, I don't think...
wear your funny costumes. This is Jesus. You're going to eat him. Wink.
Wink. I kind of want a full essay on that. I want the correlation of Christianity.
I will get my doctorate on that.
Gorgeous. Thank you. So, I mean... they're not dressed up as Mary and Joseph. But they're following the statue, usually the Virgin Mary. There can be various different things. Sometimes the whole nativity, there's different things. But at the end of the first house to be denied and then start the process all over again. So basically they're like wandering through the streets and everyone's following it and they're singing hymns and litanies and all of those things. And then they get to the first house and they
let us in.
And there's a little bit of... That's exactly the dialogue. And they go, okay. And then they go back and then you do it over the series of 9 days.
Right.
So that kind of took over the festival, right? Because I think if they came in and they were just like, no, on the 25th, you celebrate Jesus's birth. They're like, cool, but we have 19 days leading up to this. So like, And they're like, oh, like, let's do this with them. And then that would, whatever, right? So.
Sounds a lot more boring.
Totally.
Where are
the sacrifices?
Where's the drugs?
Where's the drugs? Where's the amaranth?
Right.
Yeah, I'm with you.
The race.
What do you call it? So in 1523, 4 years after Cortez arrives, Fray Pedro de Gante wrote to Philip II detailing the celebration of Christmas with himself, 12 Franciscans, and his now indigenous converts. So thus the beginning of the evangelization of Mexico.
Good for him. Woohoo.
Boo, boo. Tomato. So that's it. That is Panquetzaliztli, and the celebration of Huitzilopochtli, and then how that has now become the celebration of Christmas in Mexico.
What an interesting, just slash and burn of everything that was from the Aztecs. I get it, that's what colonialism did, yada yada.
Yeah.
But to have it go from 20 days to just 9 days, it's like,
right.
I get it. You want me to work more, but come on.
Bro, we had a whole 20 days, right? Yeah. Give me some time. Right. Jesus. Well, not to give away too much, but we're going to have a similar topic for my next one.
Oh.
A little bit more related to the bigger part of really Jesus coming in on the 25th.
Oh.
Because he wasn't born in December.
No, he was not.
So,
the Earth is only 2,000 years old.
Have you heard? So that is everything. I do think it's as we're going through some of these more and more kind of more traditional cultural practices and beliefs and myths, around the Aztecs, the Mexican people, and the Nahuatl language. I feel like I'm getting better and better each time.
There was a lot less stumbling this time.
Thank you. I appreciate that. A lot less setting for you.
Yeah.
What do you call it?
I won't ever say these words, but you're doing great.
Thanks. But I think it is really cool to see correlations. And I think it's cool to see that how you can pull that across the globe in some ways as well.
Oh, 100%.
Right? And so I think it's just kind of fun and kind of cool. But as we are in December, this episode comes out.
Yeah.
I think it's just kind of fun to see. Okay, so what would we have been doing now during the festival? You know what I mean? So anyway, but yeah, that's all I got for you, Dev. Thanks for sticking around.
No,
we should probably try to introduce some more. I said it last time too. Bring back the sacrifices. And I think stand they tried by
to do that with the Purge movies.
Oh,
but that was the white man version.
Yeah,
that's
that's
the incel white man. That's not good.
I want the ceremony.
Right.
I want the heart.
I want to be kicked down some stairs.
Right. Come on. But then you have to think about it. You have to climb the stairs first. So might as well just get kicked down. Because I'm not climbing back down them. Yeah, 100%. But all right, everyone. Thank you so much for sticking around. Very much appreciate it. Make sure you can follow us, and subscribe on all social media platforms at WDYK_podcast. We hope you're enjoying these things. Of course, always let us know if there's anything that you want to hear about for future topics and things. But thank you so much for the engagement. Keep it coming. Very much appreciate it. And we will catch you next week.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.